You spend 50 years working the sea, saving every dollar for the quiet life you and your wife earned. Nearly $1 million tucked away, your fortress against old age. Then, on a stormy night, the back door splinters. A masked figure you raised like a son bashes your skull, rifles your safe, and vanishes with everything. By morning, your life savings are gone, wired to shadows while you bleed on the living room floor. Most men would break. I didn't. I'm Elias Grant, 75 years old, and what I did next turned me into something the ocean itself would fear. If you want to know how one betrayed old man hunted down his thief, fought through lies, gunfire, and a final showdown on a crumbling cliff, stay with me. Hit that subscribe. You won't believe how this ends. Elias Grant had lived 3/4 of a century in the small fishing village of Port Haven, perched on the rugged Northern California coast. The sea had been both provider and punisher, teaching him patience, strength, and the quiet acceptance that some things are simply taken from you. He'd captained his trawler through fog thick enough to swallow ships, mended nets in gales that howled like banshees, and come home with holds full of silver salmon and Dungeness crab that kept the family afloat. At 75, Elias had eased into the rhythm he and Ruth always dreamed about. Their cedar-shingled house sat on a cliff with an unbroken view of the Pacific. Their son Thomas ran a hardware store inland, their daughter Grace taught 3rd grade, and the grandkids visited every summer with sticky fingers and endless questions about the ocean. The nest egg they'd built sat at just under $950,000, modest by city standards, but a fortune earned the hard way, meant for medical bills, helping the kids, and quiet sunsets on the porch. That February night, the storm came in hard, wind screaming through the pines, rain lashing the windows like buckshot. Ruth had gone to bed early with a headache. Elias dozed in his leather armchair by the dying fire, the crackle of logs mixing with the roar outside. He stirred at a faint noise, too deliberate for wind. Before he could rise, the back door exploded inward. A figure in black burst through, masked, quick, purposeful. Elias had time for one confused thought. This isn't a random burglar, before a heavy flashlight cracked across his temple. Pain bloomed white-hot. He crumpled to the rug, blood warm on his face, vision swimming. Through the haze, he watched the intruder rip open the desk drawer, snatch the safe key only family knew about, and vanish back into the storm. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Then silence except for the rain and his own ragged breathing. Ruth found him 20 minutes later, screaming his name. Neighbors called the sheriff. Paramedics stitched the gash, checked for concussion. The deputies dusted for prints, took photos, promised to investigate. But when Elias, head throbbing and bandaged, opened the hidden safe behind a bookshelf, his stomach dropped. The emergency cash envelope was gone. Worse, the USB drive with offshore account credentials and the printed statements showing their full retirement savings had vanished. By dawn, logged in with backup codes he'd wisely kept separate, Elias confirmed the nightmare. Transfers executed at 2:17 a.m. while he lay unconscious, draining nearly everything to untraceable wallets and a Cayman account. $950,000. Gone. Ruth sat at the kitchen table, pale and shaking. Who would do this to us, Elias? Who could hate us that much? Elias didn't answer right away. He stared out at the gray ocean, feeling something cold and ancient uncoil inside him. Because one name surfaced like a body from the deep. Cody Barrett, Ruth's sister's boy. The nephew they'd taken in after his parents died in a car wreck when he was 12. The kid they'd fed, clothed, guided through teenage trouble, helped with community college. Cody, now 38, always charming, always scheming, always borrowing money with promises he never kept. Cody, who'd visited just 3 weeks earlier, admiring the view, asking casual questions about their savings for future planning. Cody, whose muffled voice Elias now recognized with absolute certainty. The sheriff would search for a masked stranger. But Elias knew the truth. He stood slowly, wincing at the pull of stitches, and met Ruth's terrified eyes with a steadiness that frightened her more than the break-in. I'm getting it back, Ruth. Every single dollar. And I'm making sure he never takes from anyone again. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving deceptive calm. Inside Elias Grant, a different storm was rising, one that would carry him far from the gentle man Ruth had married, into darkness he never imagined at 75. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in patience, the kind the sea teaches when you wait hours for the net to fill. The sheriff's investigation went nowhere. No fingerprints. No forced entry visible to casual eyes. Storm washed away tracks. Standard home invasion, they concluded. Insurance would cover the physical cash. The digital theft was complicated. Elias let them think he accepted it. He started gathering threads no one else looked for. The faint muddy boot print near the back door. Size 11, same as Cody's. The lingering trace of cheap cologne on the desk chair. The timing of transfers matching the exact window. He'd been unconscious. He drove to Cody's apartment in the nearest city, parked across the street, and watched. Cody came and went in new clothes, a flashy watch glinting on his wrist, smirking on phone calls like a man who'd won the lottery. Elias noted the new black sedan, the leather jacket that cost more than Cody had ever earned honestly. That night, long after Ruth slept, Elias sat at the kitchen table with an old nautical notebook. He listed everything: Cody's known hangouts, old associates, the crypto exchanges mentioned, and recovery emails from the bank. He called in Favors, a retired fleet friend who knew digital tracing, a former deputy turned PI who owed him from 30 years back. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened. Cody was planning to vanish. One-way ticket to Belize under a false name. Storage unit rented in cash, packed with luggage and traveler's checks. Elias followed him one afternoon, waited until Cody left, then sweet-talked the elderly clerk into letting him check on my nephew's things. Inside, duffel bags, burner phone, map of Central America with escape routes marked. The burner phone, lifted during a midnight visit under cover of fog, was the key that turned the lock. Text to an unknown contact are instructions to time the break-in with the storm. Promises of a 50-50 split. And one message that froze Elias's blood. Hit him hard enough he doesn't wake up soon. Can't have him stopping the transfers. It wasn't just theft. It was attempted murder dressed as family loyalty. Elias sat in the dark living room until sunrise, revolver cleaned and loaded on the table beside him. Ruth found him there, eyes bloodshot but resolute. "You're scaring me," she whispered. "The man you married died that night on the rug," he said quietly. "What's left will finish this." He began preparing in ways no one expected from a 75-year-old fisherman. Visits to an old army buddy's gun shop. Long walks rebuilding strength. Studying maps, learning back roads south. He waited for the right moment, patient as tide. Because revenge, he now understood, wasn't wild rage. It was the slow, inexorable pull of the ocean, rising quietly until it swallowed everything. Elias left before dawn, truck loaded, revolver under the seat, duffel by the door. He kissed Ruth fiercely. "Just a little while. I'll bring us back whole." The trail led down Highway 101. Text showed Cody and our Ronan Hale, a low-level money launderer out of L.A., planning to meet at a rundown motel, split the cleaned funds, then fly separate routes south. 2 days of driving, redwoods giving way to open coast, sleepy towns blurring past. Elias slept in rest areas, ate from coolers, kept moving. He reached the motel at midnight. Cody's black sedan sat outside room 12. An hour later, a battered van pulled in. Stocky man, hoodie, Ronan Hale. They disappeared inside. Elias watched from the shadows across the street until Ronan left. Then he moved. The cheap door gave with one solid shoulder. Cody spun from the table, burger halfway to his mouth. "Uncle Elias?" The word tasted like poison. Elias stepped in, closed the door, revolver in hand. "One chance, Cody. Transfer it all back. Tonight." Shock turned to nervous laughter. "You're out of your depth, old man. Money's gone, clean, split." Elias raised the gun. "I'm not asking again." Cody lunged for a drawer. Elias was faster, grabbed the wrist, slammed it down. A small pistol clattered out. "You needed a partner just to rob your own blood?" Elias growled. Cody deflated. "Ronan's got most of it." Heading south tonight, San Diego handover, then border. Elias zip-tied his wrists. "Then we're paying Ronan a visit." They hit the highway, following Ronan's distant taillights. Cody begged, threatened, then went silent as he realized the old man he dismissed was now the most dangerous thing on the road. Dawn painted the sky blood red when Ronan turned off toward an abandoned cannery on a deserted coastal cliff. Rusted silos, broken windows, waves crashing far below. Elias parked a quarter-mile back. "Cut the ties. You're going to help me get our money back, or you'll wish that night finished what you started." They walked into the cannery as gulls screamed overhead, the final reckoning waiting in the salt-heavy air. The cannery's vast hall smelled of rust and old salt. Sunlight speared through shattered skylights, illuminating Ronan Hale at a folding table, laptops, cash bundles, encrypted drives. He looked up sharply as Elias and Cody entered, hand drifting toward his holster. "Cody, you moron. You brought him here." Elias leveled the .38. "Hands up. This ends now." Ronan raised them slowly, smirking. "Old fisherman turns vigilante. Cute. Half the money's still yours if you walk." "You told him to kill me," Elias said quietly. "Transfer it all back." Ronan shrugged, moved to the laptop. Cody rattled off wallet addresses, voice shaking. Elias watched balances climb. 300,006.8, nearing full restoration. Then Ronan's smirk deepened. "One thing you should know, Pops. Cody's been playing bigger games than family theft." He hit a remote. A wall panel ground open, safe packed with bearer bonds, gold coins, a ledger. "Your nephew skimmed cartel cash. Used your accounts as cover. That's why we rushed the job. They were closing in." Cody went white. It was temporary. Engines roared outside. 3 black SUVs screeched into the yard. Doors flew open. Armed men in tactical gear spilled out, weapons up. "Find Hale. The money now." Gunfire erupted, automatic rounds shredding the entrance. Elias grabbed Cody, dubbed behind a rusted tank. Returned fire calmly, 2 shots, 1 man down. Ronan shouted negotiations, but bullets cut him short, body slumping over the table. Cody screamed. Elias hauled him toward a side exit, rounds whining past. Outside, the cliff plunged straight to jagged rocks and foaming sea. No escape landward. Elias sliced the ties. Swim or die. They jumped together, cold shock stealing breath, waves battering like hammers. Elias surfaced, grabbed Cody's collar, struck out for a hidden cove he knew from decades fishing these waters. Hours later, exhausted on a remote beach, Elias checked his waterproof phone. Transfers had completed in the chaos, the full amount restored, plus Ronan's hidden stash wired as a dying act. Cody lay, gasping. "What now?" "You turn yourself in. Confess everything, theft, the cartel ties. Or I finish this myself." Cody nodded, broken. Elias hiked to the nearest town, called anonymously. Authorities found Cody on the beach, took him into custody. Weeks later, back in Port Haven, Elias sat on a porch with Ruth. Their accounts whole again, insurance payouts and quiet investments, adding a buffer they never expected. The sheriff closed the case as robbery gone wrong among criminals. Cody faced decades. Ruth held his hand. "You came back to me." "Always," Elias said, watching the endless waves. "The sea takes. Sometimes it gives back. But some debts sink you forever." In the quiet evenings that followed, Elias Grant was still the same man on the outside, scarred hands, gentle smile for grandkids. But inside, forged in betrayal and fire, he carried a new certainty. Some storms you don't survive unchanged. And some men, no matter their age, refuse to let the tide take everything.